Welcome, beautiful people, to Kamp Koji. My name is Joel, and thank you for joining me as I break down the biggest gaming news from the week that was on the only podcast you will ever need. Now, on today's show, we're going to talk about Konami's new Silent Hill partnership, Kojima joining Xbox, and a couple of Sony stories, including some key acquisitions. But first, I found this story about ads in games that I thought would work, in addition to last week's story about ads in Facebook Oculus. According to an article by Axios, a company named Player One wants to run video ads inside of traditional console games. They claim EA and Tencent Hi-Res Studios have already struck deals, but EA has denied these reports. So I wanted to quickly sort of squeeze this into today's show. We do have a lot to talk about, but I found this interesting just because we were talking about ads last week with the whole thing about Facebook adding ads into VR. Now, according to this company, the platform will let users determine whether they want to watch a 15 or 30-second video ad in exchange for being able to unlock exclusive gaming perks. As I mentioned last week, traditional advertising just won't work on games not games, but gamers. And there's just a reason why traditional ads won't work anymore, and that's because of I'm over here looking for my cell phone. I don't know where it is, but basically it's because of our cell phones. These things will never ever work. Actually, it's two reasons. Number one is because gamers are not used to traditional advertising in games, which means that they will reject them a lot easier than a much more casual audience would. So that's why you see a lot of free-to-play ads in mobile games. Even like, you see these shovelware almost in cell phone games where you go to the iOS store, you go to see what's the top game on the platform, and then usually it's just these cheap games that seem to be built in a week in order to, it's almost like a pump and dump, make a lot of money off of advertising while the game is hot. Usually the people who develop and publish those games, they'll get really, really aggressive running Facebook and, social media ads on TikTok and Instagram to try to funnel a bunch of players into these games, funnel a lot of players in a short amount of time, make a lot of money off of that advertising, and then eventually the game starts to die out. And by the time, it starts to die down, they already have the next game prepared, and it's just lather, rinse, repeat. They just do the same thing over and over. But the reason why a lot of mobile gamers will sit through ads, whether it's to get an extra perk inside of a mobile game, or, a lot of these free-to-play games, what they'll do is that once you lose a life, or after the first or second level, you'll immediately get played an unskippable ad. And a lot of those mobile gamers are used to that because that's all they really know. For traditional gamers, that's not what we're used to. We're not used to even small things like seeing an ad in a loading screen, or we saw what EA tried to do. I think it was with UFC 3. And I think it was when Amazon was trying to advertise that show called The Boys, and they started doing, I think, unskippable ads. And then 2K tried to do the same thing with NBA 2K. And it's always funny to see those things happen because the same canned response from the companies happen, which is, oh, we heard the feedback, we're listening to you guys, we're going to take this off. When you know exactly what happened, before they push the button, they say, let's try this. If too many people complain, we'll just take it down and we'll look like heroes. And that's one of the reasons why this won't work on traditional gamers, is because we're just not used to this. And then the other issue with it is that when you do ads in a mobile game, let's say there are a lot of games, like one of my favorite mobile games, I think it's called Subway Surfers. And I know they do something where when you end your run, you can watch, I think, like a 30-second ad, and then it will double the amount of coins you picked up during your run, something like that. I've seen a lot of mobile games do that, where you'll complete a level or you'll do a run in these infinite runners, And then right at the end, you're able to watch an ad to double the amount of stuff that you picked up or be able to pick up extra jewels or whatever. I think the Crash Bandicoot game does it. But one of the reasons why it's more effective in a mobile game is because you're using it on your cell phone and you're trapped. You basically can't do anything else. You have to run that ad, and maybe you can mute it and decide to do something else in the real world, but you're still trapped on your cell phone, as opposed to what will happen if it gets put into traditional games, because it looks like what's happening is their aim is to make it optional. So, hey, if you sit down and watch this 30-second ad, I think they were talking about up to 10 ads per day, you'll get 100 coins to spend inside of the store. We all know what's going to happen. There are probably a lot of gamers that will look at this. Let's use Warzone as an example, or Apex Legends, even though we know that EA said they're not doing anything with this. What's going to happen is they will activate that ad before they start their gaming session. Maybe they'll just run 10 ads in a row, and they'll just keep on clicking the ad, let it keep going, and then they're just going to do something on their cell phone. No one's really going to be paying attention to the ads. That's why traditional advertising just doesn't work, period. Same thing happens with TVs. We have DVRs now where we just skip everything, or we have our cell phone. So as soon as an ad plays, once again, you're not stuck in a single place. You have another screen in order to, browse TikTok or go on Twitter until that ad is over. As I said, these things just won't work. You're better off offering sponsorship. So, you take one of your old skins. Once again, I use Apex Legends as an example. Maybe you take a skin that's been in the store for a while, and you offer that skin for free for 24 hours. And you say, hey, get this skin for free, brought to you by Pringles or something like that. Or you charge, Coca-Cola, hey, would you like to sponsor Double XP Weekend? Get Double XP this weekend, brought to you by Coca-Cola. Those types of advertising work a heck of a lot better to gamers, because the brand is still attached, the logo is attached, they're basically linked together, but you still have that brand recognition, but it's not forced on gamers, and it's something where if people are playing Warzone, you're telling a friend, hey, it's Double XP this weekend, they're going to ask why. Be like, oh, Coca-Cola is paying for Double XP this weekend. Or a few weeks after that was Reese's Pieces or whatever, because we all know the biggest advertiser for gamers is garbage junk food, because that's just basically the way it is. It's probably one of their best ad demographics that they're going by. But like I said, this is not going to work. It looks like EA already said they rejected it. I could see why this would be appealing for a lot of publishers, especially when it comes to free-to-play experiences, free-to-play games. But once again, you can't force ads onto gamers. Really, the only way to do it is the way that I just mentioned it, or you have to go the Fortnite route, which is tricking people. So you give away a free Stormtrooper, skin, and they're not even thinking about it. Actually, I am advertising for Star Wars, but it's a fun cosmetic that you could put on. You're not even thinking about the fact that I'm selling you Star Wars and I want you to go watch the film. That's really going to be the future of advertising. All right, our first story deals with Konami and Bloober team. They have announced that they are creating a strategic partnership. Bloober is known for almost nothing but horror games, including The Medium, Blair Witch, Observer, and Layers of Fear. Bloober team president Piotr Babieno said, "It is a historic day for me and the culmination of several years of our work. The fact that such a renowned company as Konami has decided to just strategically cooperate with the Bloober team means that we also joined the world leaders in gaming and became an equal partner for the leading players in this market." Konami president Hideki Hayakawa added, "We have been providing unique entertainment content and ways to enjoy it through the use of information technology. In the digital entertainment industry, significant changes in the business environment are expected in the future. We look forward to combining Bloober's team and our respective characteristics and strengths to create high quality content. Now, as per the agreement, the partners declared cooperation in the development of content and the exchange of know-how. Now, while it wasn't confirmed, rumors point to Bloober working on something Silent Hill related, and apparently Konami has already outsourced at least one other Silent Hill project to a prominent developer in Japan, and there could be even more developers working on their own projects. Okay. So a few things about this. Number one is that line, I believe it came from VGC, which is, I think this has been rumored for a while, but the fact, first of all, this Bloober rumor has been around for a couple of months at least. And I think Bloober themselves teased this. I don't remember verbatim what they said, but it was something along the lines of, we're working with a very prominent publisher in our industry. And of course, as this team does almost absolutely nothing but horror games, 1 + 1 = 2, a lot of people assume that it will be Konami and Silent Hill. And then this other rumor that there are multiple Silent Hill projects being made also have been popping up. And obviously, that's where Kojima's name gets lined up. The fact that VGC is saying at least one prominent Japanese developer. I mean, that could be anyone. It could be Atlas. I mean, there are a bunch of companies out there that could be working with Konami on this, but obviously a lot of people draw the line to Kojima. You know, I've said this once, I've said it before. Like, you know, Kojima is his own person. He runs his own team. If he feels like he wants to go ahead and do this, that's up to him. For me personally, based upon everything that happened to Kojima, there's no way in hell I'm ever doing anything for Konami again. I've said it before. I'll say it again. When it comes to Silent Hill and a project that seems like guaranteed money that will absolutely sell like hotcakes as soon as it releases, it is Konami going to Kojima. You know, they need Kojima. Kojima doesn't need Konami. Kojima could just make his own horror game and be able to sell millions of copies and have an IP that he and his team own outright. I don't really see the reason why they would go to Konami. But hey, you know, if it happens, it happens. Maybe, I don't know. This guy's on a path of peace or something. I don't really know what to say. And then the other big thing about this is Bloober Team. So Bloober Team, as I said, they're really known for Layers of Fear. And then recently they were known for Blair Witch and then The Medium, which was an Xbox exclusive at one point, but it is coming to PlayStation 5. I'm not sure exactly when. I don't think it's released on PS5 yet, or it's coming to PS5. I honestly can't remember. So they're known for The Medium. And when it comes to the games that they have been putting out lately, none of them have been sort of these gigantic, critical successes. I think their Metacritics for their last two games, which were Blair Witch and The Medium, I think they hover around the 70 to 80 range. I don't think they've passed 85. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me. So they haven't been critical successes. I don't think these games have been commercial successes either. And because of that, literally the split second that this was announced, I saw people online just dumping on Bloober Team and basically being disappointed in all of this. They don't want Bloober Team working on this. And I thought that was honestly just like really unfortunate. We've reached this point, especially in our industry. But this is kind of like a worldwide issue where now, since we have access to a microphone, which is Twitter, that we can turn on at any point in time, everyone feels the need to, number one, put their opinion out there, whether it's overtly negative. And the other thing is the need to have this really knee-jerk reaction to anything that happens. And I look at it as like, there's so many people out there that I feel like completely forego the human factor of our industry. You know, it's not like these games are being built by AI machines where I can just type, make a Silent Hill game, and we're not at that point yet where it can just be coded completely by an AI. These are, human beings that are working behind these games. And what's interesting is that Bloober team, obviously, the type of games that they enjoy doing are very obvious, right? It's horror games. And you can tell, especially with the medium, that team was heavily inspired by Silent Hill. That's probably one of the games that probably got them into development. So you can understand the excitement of that team. You know, whenever this announcement happened internally, imagine the president of your company telling you, hey guys, I want to talk about the next game we're going to work on, and we're going to work on new Silent Hill. Now, this is still rumored. I don't think they brought up Silent Hill specifically, but I mean, obviously, that's the game that they're working on. They specifically just work on horror all the time. I doubt it's Castlevania, right? So imagine going to your team and saying, hey, you know that one franchise that, inspired you to become a developer, inspired the work that we did on the medium. We're actually going to be working on a new entry in this series, whatever this game turns out to me. I mean, imagine how excited those developers must have been. And then imagine putting that news out there, and then immediately it feels like, almost overwhelmingly, people are saying, no, this is wrong. They're going to mess it up. I even saw a lot of big time influencers going on Twitter and talking. And it's just like, man, you guys suck. Like, seriously, you guys are awful. And it's like, part of me, like, I get the skepticism. I get maybe going across and saying, I really hope this turns out good. The medium wasn't really that good. But obviously, this team can only learn from their failures. They can only learn from what they did wrong. And hopefully that informs them into creating a better product. On top of that, now, once again, going back to what I said about working on a game that probably inspired a lot of the men and women that work at Bloober team, everything just gets ratcheted up, a few levels when you know that you're working on a franchise or an IP that's so beloved by not just a lot of fans out there, but beloved in terms of its entry into horror games as a whole. Like, there are a list of horror games that you can talk about in terms of their influence across the industry. And the same could be said for films. There are a bunch of horror films that you could probably list out that you can say, hey, these horror films influenced current horror that we have now, like Jordan Peele and Get Out, for example, right? And Silent Hill is on that list, along with probably a bunch of others, like Clock Tower, and probably a bunch of I'm not even thinking of off the top of my head. And you just know that you really have to bring your A+ game. So I just look at it as like, I guess prepare for the worst, hope for the best, but at the same time, just, understand that there are human beings behind these games. I don't understand the desire to just sort of completely dump on it almost immediately as soon as this news is announced is sort of weird. And one thing that I want to talk about also, I was going to talk about it during this segment. Let me look at my time. I was going to talk about it during this segment, but I'm going to talk about it a little bit later, which is why people are so excited about Konami getting back into video games. And it's funny because when I was preparing for this show, when I prepare for this show, I write out a sort of a guideline of everything I'm going to talk about. And obviously my script isn't fully written verbatim. Most of it is obviously just freestyle off the top of my head. But as I was writing, I started to realize, like, man, Konami is being like very quickly forgiven by a lot of fans, and it looks like a bulk of our industry. But it got to the point where, honestly, I think I'm just gonna have to do a separate video on it because I just noticed my laundry list of awful things that Konami has done just grew to be too long. So I want to touch on it a little bit later on the show, but I think I'm going to have to do a separate video on that in order to really drill into why is it that it feels like Konami is being very, very quickly forgiven for everything that they've done in their time within our industry. Next story. According to VentureBeat or GamesBeat, Hideo Kojima and Microsoft has signed a letter of intent that states the two parties intend to work out the details on a publishing agreement for a new Xbox game. Now, obviously, this is a letter of intent. Usually what that means is both sides of a company or two companies representing each other have signed a letter, and it's really right in the in the name. They wrote a letter where they intend to work together in order to create a deal. So obviously things like, publishing costs, things like how profits will be split, all those fine details have not been put out there. It's more of a conversation of, let's both of us talk about publishing this game. And what it means is that for the time being, if I'm not mistaken, that idea that Kojima Productions has, they can't talk to another company for the time being until they complete this deal with Microsoft, whether it actually happens or it doesn't. But I can't imagine this failing. I'm pretty sure Xbox is doing everything they can to make this actually happen. Now, I am a big Kojima fan, when it comes to Metal Gear Solid. Obviously, Death Stranding was one of my favorite games that came out in 2019. And I briefly spoke about this. I think it was during last week's show. I talked about this possibly happening. And, it's kind of funny to be a Kojima fan because Kojima very much reminds me of Quentin Tarantino. Tarantino is probably my favorite director of all time. And once you have a person that heads a project, you tend to get excited for these projects before they even happen because you trust that director and their team so much that you're really confident that you're going to love that product. It's almost like thinking about being a fan of the Marvel Cinematic Universe has really gotten to the point where that company and all of these teams that they've built, it's been a really long time since they've completely missed the mark on something they release, whether it's film or whether it's TV shows, to the point where they can show a logo and announce Blade. And people like me that really love the Marvel Cinematic Universe films and TV shows are just instantly excited. We know it's going to work. And that's sort of the same way that I feel about Kojima. I'm one of those people that felt that Metal Gear should have ended at 4. I didn't like 5. I think 4 was a good end to the story. But as soon as Kojima left and he announced that deal with PlayStation, I was one of those people that, I don't really even care what this game is. I'm pretty sure I'm going to enjoy it. And, I was right. Death Stranding, I enjoyed it. And I feel like the same goes for Tarantino. I don't really care what the concept of the next film is. I know I'm going to love it because for me, the man hasn't missed yet. And I feel the same with Kojima. And with that being said, I'll tell you this. I don't think I've ever been this excited for a game that is just absolutely nothing right now. This game is literally just a letter of intent. We have absolutely no idea what this game is. But the reason why I'm excited about it is that what is happening right now with Kojima going to Xbox, this essentially means that Kojima and his team have an idea for a game that they believe in strongly enough that Kojima is going outside of his comfort zone in order to get this done. And I can't think of a more exciting prospect than that, right? If Sony had a cloud system in place right now, Kojima wouldn't be going anywhere. Kojima would have just stayed with PlayStation. So the fact that this guy has this idea, and he's saying to himself, I really want to execute on this idea, but I know that I need a cloud platform. That's really the only way I can execute this game, or the only way that me and my team can execute this game, to the point that this man went to Stadia first Because for those that don't remember, Stadia had their cloud platform created and finished before Xbox was even in beta for xCloud. They had talked about doing it, but Stadia was able to deliver a cloud platform before. And technology-wise, Stadia is really good. They deliver on the technology. The problem is sort of, everything else. And for whatever reason, Kojima, that deal did not go through. Apparently, Phil Harrison just declined it. Maybe it's because Kojima was asking for too much money. We know historically how a Kojima game is going to cost a lot of money, but you're going to get something that's, high quality at the end of it. And I still can't believe that Stadia could sort of let this go. I mean, think about the change in trajectory that would have happened if Stadia and Google would have brought out the blank checks to have Kojima on Stadia. We probably would have taken Stadia a lot more seriously now, because we would have known they would have one of the greatest directors we've ever seen, one of the greatest developers in gaming history, doing something that can only be played on their platform. Not even something that's a timed exclusive, but something that can only be executed on their platform, because once again, thinking during that time, Xbox wasn't even established yet. So this is why this is so interesting to me. Like, how good of an idea does Kojima Productions have that they would once again go out of the comfort zone to Stadia and then Xbox in order for this to happen? Like, this is a really, really, really big deal. Like, this is and part of me feels like online I'm not seeing a lot of people really understanding how big of a deal this is. It's the most exclusive of exclusives you can have as Xbox, because there are only currently 2 other companies set up to be able to run this type of game. And that one of them is off the board, right? That Stadia is out. But you're probably signing that letter of intent because Amazon is now wanting to take gaming a little seriously, even though for whatever reason, they're just not putting enough into Luna. I actually tweeted about this, I think a week ago. There's an episode of Kamp Koji where I talked about Luna for at least like 30 minutes, and talking about all the things that Amazon can do, the way they can leverage Twitch, the way they can leverage their top streamers in order to really take a good amount of market share in cloud gaming. And for whatever reason, Amazon has just done nothing. They're technically still in their beta and testing phase for, whatever reason, I don't know. And this letter of intent basically means that Amazon can't open. Once again, I'm confident saying that. I'm not 100% sure. But I think this letter of intent means that Amazon, Kojima cannot go to Amazon and have a conversation about putting this game on their platform unless the Xbox deal falls through and they're unable to get into an agreement. I don't see this falling through. There's just no way Phil Spencer and Xbox are going to let Kojima, get away, because once again, this is the exclusive of all exclusives. You're building a game that can literally only run on your ecosystem, and it can only run on Xbox's xCloud. You either need an Xbox or you need a PC Xbox account in order to make this game work. It's obviously going to be something that's going to be online only, and because of that, it's a game that will be theoretically impossible to port into any other system. It's something that even if you're Xbox, you don't even have to pay extra for exclusivity, really, because the only other platform that this game can go to is Amazon. But I'm sure that Xbox is going to do everything possible in order for this to happen. I wonder if part of the publishing is Kojima wants the IP. He wants to keep the IP. I wouldn't be surprised if that will be part of that publishing deal. And then maybe those are some of the negotiations that are going to happen. But, when in December 2015, when Kojima announced that he was working with Sony on his next game, Sony pretty much gave that man a blank check, right? Remember, at that point, Kojima Productions was just announced. I don't even think they had an office yet at that point. I don't think he had his full team built out. Maybe he had this idea for a game. He probably didn't even have the name Death Stranding yet. And Sony just basically said, here's a blank check. Here's an engine. You can have it. You don't have to pay us for it. Here's an entire team from Guerrilla. We built a team from Guerrilla of 20, 30 people, or whatever that number was, and they're yours. You're going to borrow them, and they're going to teach you and your team how to use the Decima engine. And, you know, it just, once again, it goes to show just what Hideo Kojima can command as a person within our industry. If Miyamoto, for whatever reason, decides to leave Nintendo and he becomes a free agent, I mean, just think, like, once again, that's like blank checks being tossed out left and right, because you know this man's brain is one of the greatest brains in gaming history, right? You have to roll out that red carpet. You have to, pull out that checkbook, and I just can't see Xbox letting this go. And obviously, like I said, a letter of intent does not mean that this is set in stone. This is definitely going to happen, but I just can't imagine Xbox letting this guy go. Now, there was sort of a negative to the story, which was this narrative. I mean, it's so stupid. I tweeted about this, I think it was a few days ago, where someone started a change.org form that people could sign, a petition to, tell Kojima to not abandon Sony, or Kojima is turning his back on Sony. And man, if you have a friend of yours that is like this, that feels so entitled as a consumer, that they feel that they should have full control over where a person takes their business next, you have to be that friend that sits them down and says, let me talk to you about how weird it is that you either created or signed a petition, or you're complaining online. Let me talk to you about how weird this is. Because once again, we're talking about a game that he has literally only taken to Xbox because they have something that PlayStation doesn't. And I had brought this up during the abandoned video that I put on YouTube, which is, hey, if Kojima decides he wants to make a VR game, he's going to go to Sony. That's where he's comfortable. That's where, once again, you're talking about a company that had so much faith in him. They basically signed a no-look deal. Like, we don't even know what this game is. I mean, think about it. Think about Kojima sitting down with PlayStation and him explaining Death Stranding. Death Stranding was confusing to Norman Reedus, who was the star of the game. Even he admitted, I don't even know what the hell's happening here. So, of course, PlayStation didn't even understand what the hell's going on. But even if you sit down, imagine Kojima explains to you, yeah, it's a delivery game, so most of the time you're just delivering boxes. Like any other director walking into PlayStation's offices that sits down and says, yeah, I want to make this game. It's kind of post-apocalyptic. Everyone is down in bunkers, and you're a delivery guy, and you're carrying boxes and stuff like that, and you're driving trucks. They'll tell you no, just not interested. But when it comes to Kojima, once again, so you can understand just how much loyalty was created by Sony and Kojima Productions, not just because of the history that they had before, Kojima left Konami, but for Kojima to leave and find a company that had so much faith in him that it said, here's an engine, here's a team, here's all the support you need, here's the money we're going to put into this. Of course, you don't want to turn your back on Sony or on PlayStation, but I think that's what has me so excited about this idea. This is an idea so good that Kojima said to himself, well, I can't get it from PlayStation, so I'm going to have to go to this other company in order to execute it. Like, this has to be probably one of the greatest things this man has ever concocted in his brain, because it's one thing that he talked about a little bit with Death Stranding and Strand gameplay is the fact that you can, share resources and, talk to other, players sort of. But it's passive. It's not very active. So imagining those type of mechanics and in a cloud platform where those things can happen in real time, I mean, that's just exciting. And once again, we don't really exactly know what the idea is, but, we've seen what can be done with Flight Simulator, where once again, it's a game that can only exist on the cloud. So it'll be interesting to have Kojima do this for various reasons, but Xbox comes out winning. I mean, winning, because you have one of the greatest directors of all time, creating a game that pretty much can only exist on your platform. And on top of that, it will become a blueprint in order to entice other publishers. So now Xbox is building this cloud team that's headed by Kim Swift, and their objective is very simple. We're here to take your cloud gaming ideas and help you execute them. So now they can go to various publishers, go to Ubisoft and put on a presentation where Kim Swift is up there and says, hey, let me show you the benefits of either creating games in the future that have cloud exclusive features in it, or creating a game that can only, exist that's in the cloud. So if you're talking to Ubisoft and you're talking about Beyond Good and Evil 2, and you're saying, hey, we know you have a game where you want to be able to hop from planet to planet. Imagine being able to instantly hop into a planet, no loading, and the entire planet's infrastructure is loading in with this amazing draw distance, because while there's 1,000 players flying around at the same time, because everything is being driven by the cloud. That's insane. So just Xbox is it's just W on top of W when it comes to this. So now our final story. So our final story deals with Sony and what I'm calling this smart money, but Sony news was kind of all over the map last week, some good, some bad. But I want to start with this really weird headline from Kotaku last week, which was Sony charging devs at least $25,000 for PlayStation Store visibility. And the bulk of the story was about how indie devs have to pay a minimum $25,000 to be featured in the PlayStation Store or get lost in a sea of releases once they launch. Now, a couple of things about this article. Now, number one is that it springboards off a Twitter tirade from independent games publisher Ian Garner of Neon Doctrine. Now, there are some legitimate gripes, such as not being able to control discounts and the difficulty of publishing a game on the platform. But I really just, before I go into that, I want to talk about this article, just Kotaku as a whole, which is in this day and age where we're seeing an increase in this sort of extreme brand loyalty and, let's be honest, a decrease in reading past that flashy headline. This is a pretty irresponsible headline for Kotaku to put out there, because it's almost like you're loading those Xbox stand bullets by creating a headline that says PlayStation charges, developers $25,000 to be featured, when in that same article towards the bottom, there's a sentence that reads, quote, "We're also told that Microsoft runs similar payment schemes for the Xbox store." You can't create a headline where you're just calling out PlayStation and then towards the bottom to say, oh, yeah, Xbox actually does this too. Because, it's just irresponsible. I get it. Clickbait, which is really what all these articles are being done for nowadays anyway. Ads have really begun to, not even begun, but we're far past begun. They definitely influence a lot of the articles that are written by these big game websites like Kotaku and IGN. But it's irresponsible in the way of, if you put that up on Twitter, and they usually tweet out their articles, and on Twitter it says, what was the name of the article again? I have to find it. Sony charging devs at least $25,000 for PlayStation Store visibility. You know exactly what's going to happen. People are going to quote retweet that. And Twitter did something to sort of help. Twitter has something where when you try to quote retweet an article, they'll tell you, would you like to read the article first? But obviously they don't force you. So people are just going to quote retweet this to death. And of course, people are going to say, oh, look at PlayStation. They won't care about their indies. They're charging them $25,000. And then at that point, the narrative is now out of your hands. Even if you go in the body of that Twitter or that tweet, and you say, well, Microsoft and Xbox do the same thing, it's done. It doesn't matter. I don't care about what you're saying. My opinion is the only one that matters. My view is the only one that matters. And this headline says that only PlayStation is doing it. So I don't care what the body of the article means. Like I said, let's be honest, we're at a point in time where a lot of people share information without actually reading into it. The other thing that was weird about this is that that line. We're also told that Microsoft runs similar payment schemes for the Xbox store. When did marketing become a payment scheme? Like this like I said, there's parts of this article that I understand, and we're going to talk about it a little bit, because there were a couple of indie companies that came forward, and we're talking about a couple of the gripes that they've had working with PlayStation. But this isn't an issue. Like, you might not like it, but this is something that literally every storefront on the face of the earth does. If you want premium placement in someone's store, you have to pay for it. When you go into Walmart and you see, a Funko Pop fixture on the end cap of an aisle, that's not random. It's not like someone in Walmart's team said, we'll look nice in this end cap, let's put some Funko Pops on there. No, Funko Pop pays Walmart to have that end cap. That's prime real estate. There's a lot of storefronts where you pay for eye level. So if you have a soda section where you have a bunch of sodas everywhere, Coca-Cola is paying Walmart an extra $1 per unit or whatever, or they're giving them a discount on their wholesale price in order to put Coca-Cola on eye level instead of putting Pepsi there or something like that, right? This is just how marketing works. And I get it, $25,000 is a lot. I understand that. But that's not a scheme. That's not a scheme. You're not tricking anyone into doing. That's a scheme. A scheme is when you're tricking someone into doing something. That's not a scheme. That's basically just PlayStation saying, hey, if you want premium placement, you really want to get on this shelf, you have to pay me money because there's too many people for me to put on this shelf. Could PlayStation be super nice guys and rotate the shelf and say, I want to have a different game there every day and we're going to have a team that, yeah, they could do that, but you're leaving money on the table. These are businesses. They have to make money. That's just how this works. Now, alongside the story, there were various sites covering indie developers who shared how much worse it is to work with PlayStation compared to Nintendo and Xbox. Things like poor communication, having to be invited to sales and features, which seem impossible to acquire, poor sales due to bad discoverability, and a lack of free organic features compared to Xbox and compared to Nintendo. Now, I've said this before, I'll say it again, the PlayStation Store is an absolute mess. This is my hill. I'm not going to die on it. I will survive. But out of all three storefronts, I think Xbox is also sort of messy. I think Nintendo's probably super clean and they have the most opportunity for discoverability. I think they've done a good job. But the reason why I say PlayStation is a mess, because it is. It takes too many clicks to find the things that you're looking for. Whereas if I'm on Xbox, they have a really, really innovative sidebar where from there, okay, there's redeem. Search is just one button away. It's really easy for me to be able to navigate to what are the things that I've paid for that are not currently on my system that I can download. These types of navigations are very, very different on PlayStation. And sometimes the simplest things are just not really easy to find on PlayStation. Like I said, items that you've paid for, I don't even think there was a dedicated section. I might be wrong, but I remember when the last time I went to my PlayStation 5 and I tried to download something that I paid for, I couldn't find a downloaded section. I had to search for that game, and it does take a few extra clicks to find something as easy as like, DLC or, it's just sort of messy in a sense. I remember when Miles Morales came out and at launch for PlayStation 5, and there was a way to get the Spider-Man remastered and pay that extra money for it. It wasn't on the PlayStation Store. I had to go into the game. I had to actually Google because I couldn't. I was like, how the hell can I get this Marvel remaster? And of course, it was like very small font. I had to press X on the main menu of Miles Morales in order to get to a special page. Like I said, the PlayStation Store definitely is a mess, and there's a lot that they can do in order to make discoverability a lot better. But devil's advocate, because, I love playing devil's advocate when it comes to this stuff. We've reached this point in our industry where you can't rely on these stores to sell stuff. You just can't. If I create a product and I think that putting on Amazon and just walking away because Amazon is a big storefront, or I have a great product and think it's going to sell, it's just not. $25,000 to pay for a prominent placement in the Sony store or the Xbox store, complete absolute waste of money. You're much better off creating Facebook campaigns, TikTok, Instagram campaigns, going to as many podcasts as you can to talk about it. Smarter money is paying, mid-level streamers, click per minute. Their rates are still very low. TikTok rates are still very low. But especially going to I'm not going to go to Ninja, for example, right? But I'm going to like these mid to low tier Twitch streamers that usually stream games that are in my same niche, whether it's shooters or strategy or whatever, and I'm paying them $1,000 for whatever to play for an hour. If they get a couple thousand eyes within that hour, hey, you can do pretty good with something like that. So we sort of have reached this point where I find it hard to empathize with people when it comes to Sony sucks with discoverability. Let's be honest, all three suck. And the reason why all three suck is neither of them, I don't think, have a really strong algorithm. And no matter how strong their algorithms are, in order to make sure that what's being popped up when you go into the store is something that, I feel like I can definitely sell to you as opposed to another person. So I'm going to show this person, Shovel Knight as opposed to, Shadow, what's the name of that game? Shadow Ninja? Shoot, I can't even remember. As opposed to this indie game that I'm going to show to this other person, because I feel like they're going to buy this and you're probably going to buy that. That's a proper algorithm. The issue is there's just too many games. There's too many games being developed. This is also one of the strengths of Game Pass. This is one reason why a lot of people like Game Pass, is it reduces that friction of trying a game, and a lot of indies can get money up front for putting their games on Game Pass, which can help them finish it in the long run. But like I said, we've reached this point where indies, unfortunately, you just can't rely on the stores. No matter how much better Microsoft and Nintendo are versus Sony, all three of them pale in comparison to you doing your own marketing or guerrilla marketing and, trying to get trending in some way, shape, or form. When you look at a game that has done really good, like Poltergeist, or was it Poltergeist that was called? Or Among Us, or Valheim, for example, these successes were all almost the same. They all were Twitch. And they all were word of mouth. It wasn't like people went on Steam and were like, what's this Valheim game? What's this Among Us game? Among Us was out for over a year before it really popped. And the reason why that happened was because people on Twitch that were streaming it. So, I think that there's definitely things that Sony needs to address, because honestly, this bit of news did make them look bad. Indies have been growing and growing over the past few years. But once again, as they grow, a few things happen. Number one, it becomes difficult for you to really stand out of the crowd. When we think about Fall Guys, one of the reasons why they stood out is because they struck that deal with Sony, but that was probably Sony going to Fall Guys and not really the other way around. And then the other thing about indies is that once you do have this influx of people, how do you maintain it? We don't talk about Fall Guys as much as we used to. We don't talk about Among Us as much as we used to, because these teams weren't prepared to get this large influx of people, and obviously development of features that people want. Unfortunately, they're going to compare Fall Guys to Fortnite. And they're going to be like, look, Fortnite changes their map every month and they have new skins every day. Well, you can't compare Epic to Fall Guys, even though the Fall Guys team was bought by Epic. They still don't have access to the same resources just yet, right? It's going to take a little bit of time for something like that to happen. The same with Among Us. Among Us has had 3 developers. I'm sure they've probably grown ever since they popped off, but you're going to have a lot of patience. But at the end of the day, I really do hope Sony addresses this, because honestly, it just does make them look bad for indies to say, yeah, I would much rather work with Microsoft or Nintendo. And one thing that a legitimate gripe that they brought up, which seems to be a Sony issue, is the fact that apparently Sony has poor communication. That's awful. You never want to hear that from indies. You never want to hear that at PlayStation. We're prioritizing EA and these huge publishers over you really small developers, because whatever, you make us peanuts, we don't really care about your games. That's really not that's definitely not good for our industry, especially since we've been growing and growing and growing in terms of number of developers and number of projects that come out every week. Maybe Sony needs to invest in a dedicated store for indie. So there's the PlayStation store and there's the PlayStation indie store, and maybe we find out that store is dedicated to games made with a budget of less than $1 million or something like that. I don't know. And at the end of the day, they can't, if there's one thing we've learned about PlayStation, is that they do kind of love to nickel and dime. They want to, PlayStation looks at a lot of things and they say, can we get paid for this? And apparently, if you want to be part of an indie sale or get featured, PlayStation wants 30% of your future revenue, even after you are no longer featured. And that's something that Microsoft and Nintendo do not do. When you run a sale on Nintendo will put you on the deal shelf without you having to pay extra. So there are definitely a couple of things that I think were legitimate gripes that Sony should address, and I think that they should publicly address them. I think Herman Holt should come forward and say, hey, we heard about what's happening, here's what we're doing, blah, 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 blah. And before we go, let's talk about some of these acquisitions. So Sony announced a few studio acquisitions last week. First off was Housemarque. They're pretty much known for Returnal, but also known for Super Stardust and Resogun. The studio has been working closely with PlayStation for the past decade. The next one was mistakenly revealed by Sony Japan in an accidental tweet that pretty much confirmed that PlayStation is also adding Bluepoint to PlayStation Studios. Bluepoint is most known for its remakes. And, they're most known for their remakes for Shadow of the Colossus, and obviously the most recent, which is the PlayStation 5 Demon's Souls remakes. Now, while the first two acquisitions seemed obvious, the third one was a complete surprise. PlayStation added Nixxes Software to PlayStation Studios. This is a Dutch company that primarily specializes in PC ports and has worked primarily with Crystal Dynamics, IO Interactive, and Eidos Montreal on franchises such as Tomb Raider, Deus Ex, Hitman, and most recently, The Avengers. Nixxes will immediately join PlayStation Studios' Technology, Creative, and Services Group to provide high-quality in-house technical and development capabilities. Now, Sony's last studio acquisition was for Insomniac Games in 2019 for $229 million. Now, let's start with Housemarque and Bluepoint acquisitions, because both of these are pretty much common sense pickups for Sony. Bluepoint has not been confirmed, but that mistake was too big of a mistake. It was a tweet that had a it had a logo on it. It had an image on it. It was just something that it was too big of a mistake to be just a mistake. It had the logo on it. They actually put it in an image of Demon's Souls. I could maybe understand if the image it didn't have Demon's Souls on it, so maybe it was just a mistake where they put the Bluepoint logo instead of the Housemarque logo, but obviously it was a mistake that I'm pretty confident this will be announced at some point, but obviously the I's weren't dotted just yet for this announcement to have been made. Now, Housemarque has shown that they could do a little with a lot, so I can only imagine what they'll now be able to do. According to Housemarque, they did have a couple of publishers on the table that they wanted to that were interested in picking up Housemarque, but apparently they went with Sony. They did not really say exactly what publishers they were talking about. Off the top of my head, we can throw Tencent into that mix because Tencent is pretty much buying up everyone. Embracer Group, which is that big group that owns THQ and all these other, huge publishers. And I mean, who knows? Maybe even Xbox was in the mix. We don't know, right? But they went ahead and went with PlayStation, and obviously it shows that they probably went with PlayStation. Probably not because of money. I don't think Sony would have outbid a lot of these other companies, but I think it's just comfort. You know that you've been working with Sony for so long. You understand their hierarchy. You understand their business. Obviously, it shows that PlayStation has just been really good with them in terms of, trading resources and things like that. So when it comes to selling of a company, sometimes it's not really just about how much money I can get for it. It's also about, especially if you're keeping that same team on, you're keeping that same, CEO, you're keeping the people who created Housemarque. It's more about, obviously, a return on the investment you made when you first created Housemarque, but will this company help us move forward, right? When you think about selling to a company like Activision, more times than not, you probably will be losing control of your company, and Activision will probably end up dismantling Housemarque, for example, because that's what they've shown in their history. Sony has shown in their history that they're really, really good partnering with different studios, and you can see the quality that they're able to output when working with Sony as opposed to any other publisher. So now let's move on to Bluepoint. Bluepoint Games has 90 employees and was founded by 2 former Retro Studio employees who worked on Metroid Prime. Now, they're most known for their Shadow of the Colossus and Demon Souls remakes, but they also remastered various PlayStation releases, and that includes the God of War collection, the Ico and Shadow of Colossus collection, Metal Gear Solid HD collection, Gravity Rush remastered, and the Nathan Drake collection. So they've been working with Sony for a very, very long time. Obviously not Sony exclusively. Once again, they did port the Metal Gear Solid HD collection, which also came out on Xbox. But for the bulk of this company's existence, they've worked closely with PlayStation. Now, if and when this is announced, and I'm going to say when, because like I said, that mistake was too big of a mistake for this to not be true. Bluepoint changed their Twitter where they now explicitly are saying we're an independently owned company. And I feel like they did that because, I don't know exactly how to put this, probably because of regulations being bought by another company and it affecting stock prices, for example. That's why these leaks should not really be happening. That was a really, really huge mistake when you're in the middle of acquiring a company, but it's not 100% finished. So imagine you're the lawyers representing Bluepoint now, and once again, you're crossing the T's, you're dotting the I's, and then now this was leaked. That could affect the final price. That could affect the price of whatever that price was agreed upon for them to pay Bluepoint. Who knows? Now that it's out there, if I'm the lawyers from Bluepoint now, I'm raising that price up. Hey, you know how embarrassing it would be for you guys for Sony to make that mistake, and now we don't finish this deal and we decide to go ahead and take our business to Xbox, for example, or something like that, or remain independent. That's not going to look so good for you guys. But because of that mistake, it's not going to cost you a lot more. So we're going to raise this up by another $20 million. Look, I'm not a lawyer. I don't know exactly if that happens, but, I could definitely see something like that going down. Now, if this happens, and we're just going to keep living in if, since it's not 100% guaranteed. If this happens that Sony buys Bluepoint Games, in game history, this will go down as one of the biggest steals of our industry. We don't know the price that Sony paid for Bluepoint, but Bluepoint doesn't own a single intellectual property. The only game that they developed by themselves was a PlayStation Network game called Blast. I have it written down, Blast Factor. But that game was published by Sony. So the chances are that they don't even own that IP anyway. So you're buying into a company that only has 90 employees, does not have a single intellectual property to its name. I don't think they have their own engine. So probably a lot of the stuff that they have is not proprietary anyway from a technical standpoint. And they've only really worked on remakes. This will be a steal. Whatever money that they pay for Bluepoint is going to be a steal. We're going to look back at that number, and maybe we'll find out what that number is once they put out their finances in the future. But obviously, when they make the announcements, we're not really going to know exactly how much that is. It's going to be a steal. I mean, Bluepoint is one of the most talented teams right now in our industry. I mean, you just have to look at Demon Souls. I mean, you can even look at Shadow of the Colossus. Outside of the rest of their resume, they have not done a bad remake. And we are at the point in our industry right now where remakes are just hotter than they've ever been. Like you see it. You see what Activision is doing. You see what Capcom is doing. It's almost like they're taking the Hollywood route of like, well, we have all these old movies that are just sitting in a vault. Can we reshoot these movies? Can we remake them? Can we change a few things? And that's really what's happening. We saw Capcom do it with Resident Evil 2. We saw Activision do it with Crash and Spyro. We saw them do it with Tony Hawk. We're going to talk about a little bit later and wrap it up. We see EA doing it with Dead Space. You know, this is just hot right now. In my opinion, Bluepoint should have remained independent. If they do get bought out by Sony, I think it's great. I think it makes sense for both companies. I think it's a huge acquisition by Sony. But I honestly think Bluepoint should remain independent. And the reason why is because unlike other companies, they have they have so much room to move right now, where they can turn down offers from publishers at this point, or they can go up to publishers and say, hey, this is a game that a lot of people have been asking for a while that you guys have in your vault. What about if we step in and we remake this game, remaster it, we look at it from a different angle. We do to that game what we did with Demon Souls. They basically have something that a lot of developers wish they had. They have an absolute talent for remaking games, which, as I said, is at demand at this point in our industry higher than it's ever been before. And because of this acquisition, these Metal Gear Solid remake rumors came up again. You know, I didn't really pay much attention to the rumors before, but now it looks like Konami has understood how much money they're leaving on the table by leaving these licenses in a vault to rot. But if I call the shots at Sony, if I'm Herman Holtz, there's not a snowball's chance in hell I'm letting Bluepoint, the team that I'm about to pay cash money for, hands down one of the most talented teams now in my roster. I mean, let's be honest, every single Sony team is talented. But Jesus Christ, when you look at Demon Souls, that remake, you have yourself one of the most talented teams in our industry, hands down. The Metal Gear Solid rumors are pretty strong. It looks like something that's very likely to probably happen. I would have given this a 0% chance, but within the last few years, that 0% grew simply because it looks like Konami is ready to admit that they really suck at creating games, but they have all these licenses. We have to license it out. It's almost like someone owning a patent, but not knowing how to really utilize that patent. And they just license it out and they sit back to get their check every single month. It looks like Konami's ready to start doing that. So this isn't really a conversation about whether or not Sony will do it. I'm just saying what I would do. If I'm Sony, there's no way. There's zero chance in hell I'm doing a remake from Metal Gear Solid. And I'm going to tell you guys why. The moment you strike this deal with Konami takes a percentage off the top, probably for every single copy sold. So now I have to give Konami whatever, 20, 30%, whatever this deal comes out to every single time I sell Metal Gear Solid. Not only that, Metal Gear Solid is an intellectual property that Konami ran into the ground. Because remember, once Kojima left, it's not like they tried their best to make another great Metal Gear. They did Metal Gear Survive. Remember that game that charged you $10 for a save slot? You guys remember that game? That absolute piece of garbage. And then that was it. Metal Gear Solid has rotted. It's done absolutely nothing since then. The only thing we've heard is rumblings of an upcoming film. That's it. They not only allowed it to die, they sped up its death. Like Metal Gear Survive was basically like shooting Metal Gear, putting in a casket and just throwing dirt over it. That is basically what they did when they released Metal Gear Survive. So now if I'm Sony, if I'm PlayStation, I'm supposed to take my best team and have them create a game for Konami, because that's what's happening here, right? Sony will make money off Metal Gear Solid Remake. Of course, they're going to make some good money, but they're not going to make much money as Konami. Because what will happen is that percentage that Konami makes, whatever, that's peanuts to them. Okay, we'll take 20, we'll take 30%. Give me my check every single month. But what you're doing for Konami is that I, as PlayStation, I am reviving your intellectual property. Remember, there's a Metal Gear Solid film on the horizon. That's Oscar Isaac, one of the biggest growing stars in Hollywood right now. If I'm PlayStation now, I'm helping you sell your movie. If I'm PlayStation now, if you decide, oh shoot, my IP is doing good, let me go to McFarlane Toys and start doing figures again. Let me go to this company and start doing Metal Gear Solid statues. Let me, go to Pop. Let's start churning out more Metal Gear Solid pops. Let's go to Netflix. Man, that Castlevania worked really good for us. Where it's whatever season 3. Shoot, let's go do a Metal Gear Solid anime. That's a prequel to this game, or this, that, and the third. And PlayStation did all that. Like PlayStation did all the heavy lifting for you, reviving the intellectual property. If I'm Sony, this is one of the stupidest things you can do. Why would I do that instead of giving, Bluepoint Games? Like, why wouldn't I give Bluepoint Games Siphon Filter or something like that? Right? Why wouldn't I have them revive my IP? Why would I not go to Bluepoint? I'm going to tell you a game that you guys are going to go, oh shit, that's a good idea. I'm going to give you an IP that will be perfect for Bluepoint Games. You ready? The Order 1886. Think about The Order 1886. It was developed by Ready at Dawn. Ready at Dawn is now an Oculus studio, right? The Order 1886 is probably, it's one of the deepest cuts in video game history. It is a cult classic. It is one of the greatest failures in our industry. It was a game that was technically amazing, that had an amazing setting, had that whole Victorian future past, everything was, so mashed up, had werewolves. It was amazing. There's so much about that world that was really, really good. Why go back and find an old success and try to make it successful again? Why not take a failure that had a really good following and just create a new game called The Order? Not even a remake, but a reimagining. Could you imagine, after what we've seen, what this team could do with Demon Souls, imagine what they could do with The Order, which is once again an IP, an intellectual property that you as Sony own, that now can be turned into, future properties, can be turned into an HBO show. Last of Us show is shooting right now. It's just smart money. I don't think it makes any sense unless Konami is selling me the Metal Gear Solid license, cash money. I own Metal Gear. Sony now owns Metal Gear. There's not a snowball's chance I'm making a Metal Gear Solid remake. If it happens, it happens. It looks like it's happening, but whatever. Before we finish this up, geez, I'm way over time. I do want to address the difference between PlayStation and Microsoft when it comes to acquisitions. And, actually, before we talk about that, let's talk about Nixxes. So really quickly, it looks like Nixxes is a team that Sony picked up for one purpose and one purpose only, and that's to port over PlayStation games to PC. This makes the utmost sense. Who knows if this will be a team that will work on something original. Honestly, it doesn't look like why this team was picked up. I brought this up in an old episode, Horizon for PC, 250% return on their investment. Uncharted, we know is coming. I could definitely see God of War and Ghost of Tsushima coming to PC. Why not pick up a team that can speed up that process and make sure that with these games launched, they're extremely stable. Horizon had a couple of issues when it launched. Perfect sense. Very, very smart acquisition from Sony. And I want to bring this up, which is the difference between Sony and Xbox, or PlayStation and Xbox, before we go, which is when Microsoft has the capital to take a bit of a gamble with the acquisitions, this limitation for PlayStation has led to much smarter acquisitions within their industry. They work very closely with their teams. They build these relationships to the point that the acquisitions just make sense. To the point when they're announced, we're like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Housemarque going to Sony. That makes a lot of sense. When they acquired Naughty Dog, Sucker Punch, Insomniac, it just wasn't really a surprise. And I really like that about PlayStation's strategy. This is opposite to Microsoft. When we think about E3 2018, they announced 4 acquisitions: Undead, Playground, Ninja Theory, and Compulsion Games. Playground Games made sense. They created Forza, which was one of their biggest franchises up to that point. That one made sense. Ninja Theory, in my opinion, made sense. You have a proven award-winning developer. Then you have Compulsion Games. Compulsion Games is an absolute gamble. They only made 2 games. One of them, their most recent, was We Happy Few, which was a critical and commercial failure. Then you pick up Undead Labs, which has created only one single game, which was State of Decay. State of Decay has never been a critical success. It has never been a commercial success. Those 2 are just absolute gambles. You're just taking your money. You're saying, you know what? That team looks pretty good. They could probably come up with something. It's very different now from PlayStation, where they work with this team so close that they know if I pay money for this team, I'm going to get my return. So when they bid on Housemarque, they feel confident that they're going to get their return. They feel confident that the people that are running that company are competent. And it's very, very different from Microsoft's strategy. And I want to bring up these stats because this is an interesting one. After Insomniac was acquired by Sony in 2019, their success continued. They released Miles Morales and Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart. Both of these games are Game of the Year contenders. And that's obviously not talking about the first Spider-Man and other Ratchet & Clanks, right? After Microsoft bought Rare in 2003, check this out. These are all their releases. Nothing but duds. Grabbed by the Googlies, Conquer Live and Reloaded, Cameo, Perfect Dark Zero, Viva Pinata, Banjo Nuts and Bolts. None of these were critical commercial successes, right? Sea of Thieves is really the first mega hit that Rare has delivered for Xbox in 18 years. 18 years. This is what they delivered. Insomniac cost Sony to $229 million. Remember, that was in 2018. Rare cost Microsoft $375 million, and that was way back in the year 2003. Now, Microsoft outbid other companies. I think they outbid EA and Activision for Rare. But you see the difference, right? Microsoft did not do their due diligence. They did not work closely with Rare. Rare worked closely with Nintendo. Oh, excuse me, that was another company. They did outbid Nintendo. But most of Rare's talent that made Rare what they were, that were there when Donkey Kong was created, when Banjo was made, they were gone. Rare was just a name at that point. And they looked at it as like, man, look, they made Donkey Kong, they made Banjo. Look at all that family-friendly content made for Nintendo. We need that. And they just dropped this gigantic check. And it's definitely one of the worst investments that Microsoft has ever made in their company history. Because remember, this is Xbox. This is one of Microsoft's worst acquisitions. And this is what I like about PlayStation. This is also why I liked Xbox buying Bethesda, because that was a close relationship. Xbox has worked with Todd Howard and the rest of Bethesda and its software for a very long time. Since the original launch of the Xbox, that acquisition made so much sense. Playground Games with Forza, that one made a lot of sense. Sony, every single acquisition is like that. There are no gambles. There are no mistakes to be made by Sony. If they acquire a company, they feel confident when they drop in that money. And that's really the difference between them as Microsoft, is that most of Microsoft Studios right now is just sort of wait and see. Obsidian was like a really good gamble. It's a really good bet. But putting together the initiative, that's a gamble. Working on Perfect Dark, that's a gamble. Same thing you could say about Compulsion Games. So, I think PlayStation, this is what I'm loving about our industry right now, is that each of these companies are doing their own thing. they're doing it their own way and it's working for them, but definitely smart money. PlayStation is the one that's really doing a much better job. Hot releases. July 6th, we have A Plague Tale Innocence coming to Switch. Then we have upgrades for PS5 and Xbox Series X. July 8th, we have Sam and Max, This Time Is Virtual, coming to PC. And then July 9th, we have Monster Hunter Stories 2, Wings of Ruin, coming to PC and Switch. Now it's time for us to wrap it up. These are the stories we didn't have time to get to. Ghost of Tsushima is getting a director's cut releasing August 20th that includes a new story set on Iki Island. Now, I'm really digging this director's cut concept that Sony's doing. They announced the same thing with Death Stranding. I think this is kind of cool. I don't know for sure. This is speculation from me, but it sort of feels like it's re-releasing the game with content that was cut during the game's development instead of content that was made exclusively after. Like, I could imagine Iki Island existed in Ghost of Tsushima at one point. They realized they had to cut that part of the map, and then probably now it's coming back for the director's cut. I think it's actually kind of a cool concept as opposed to complete edition or anything like that. One issue with this, petty. PlayStation, you guys got to stop with these petty prices. $10 just to upgrade this game from PlayStation 4 to PlayStation 5. Such a petty charge. This game came out just last year. You know, if there's one thing that I'm hating about PlayStation this generation is that they do nickel and dime. And once again, they're a company. They can choose to do whatever they want. They don't have to follow along with the rest of our industry. But come on, man. This is like as petty as it gets. It's just as petty as not being able to play a PS5 game with a PlayStation 4 controller. We all know why you're doing it. You're just taking this opportunity to make more money. But come on, guys. $10. It's not really that big of a deal. Just give it away for free. A Dead Space remake has all but been confirmed by GamesBeat. This is one of the oldest rumors in a long time. I actually think I brought this up on the show over a year ago where I said Capcom's Resident Evil success should be showing EA that a Dead Space remake would work. And apparently that's exactly what happened. That's one of the reasons why this happened. EA saw how much success Capcom was seeing with Resident Evil 2 remake. And obviously Resident Evil 3 wasn't as big of a success, but still doing pretty well. And I'm sure that Part 4 remake will blow the doors off the hinges in terms of records, in terms of sales. And obviously it showed to EA, well, we can actually do this. So it looks like a remake is underway. But I just want to say something before I move on. I hate that our industry has become so much about leaks. It just, so many of these journalists seem to be like their only worth right now is leaks. It's like, I don't even care what you're writing. I don't care what you're doing. What can you tell me that nobody else knows? And it kind of sucks that these surprises are ruined. I really wish we didn't know this actually existed, and it would have been a surprise. You know, rumors are they're going to show it at EA Play this month, but just a minor gripe from me. GTA 6 was trending once again last week after a leaker claimed that GTA 6 would be set in a modern-day Vice City, have a map that evolves over time, and come out in 2024 or 2025. This actually goes in line with what I've been saying. This story has been corroborated by a few other journalists. Once again, I did the math for you guys. The Koji gang gets it here first. I said this game is not coming out 2024 or 2024 at the earliest. I still personally think it's going to be 2025. It might be 2025, even though I guess 2024. Yes, I'm guessing 2024, but it could very well be 2025. It just doesn't make any fiscal sense for this game to get rushed. I talk so much about crunch here on the show. Let them take their time. As much as I want Grand Theft Auto, fiscally, the company is doing so well with Grand Theft Auto Online. They're going to re-release Grand Theft Auto 5 again this year on Series X and PlayStation 5. Take your time. You really don't need to rush this. And finally, Remedy Entertainment has confirmed 2 upcoming projects taking place within the Control universe, one being a bigger budget Control game designed to further expand the Control franchise, and the other a co-op multiplayer spin-off set in the same universe, which is currently codenamed Condor. I think this is great. Personally, for me, if you've heard this podcast before, you know that definitely did not love Control as many other people. It's definitely not game of the year for me, but I thought it was pretty cool. So, and I love Remedy Entertainment. So I'm so happy for their success. So this seems pretty cool. And being able to expand that universe, I think, is a really good idea. So I'm definitely excited to find out what they're doing for the future with whatever that co-op thing is. Before we go, shout out to Rockstar co-founder Dan Houser. It looks like he's registered a brand new studio called Absurd Ventures in Games. So shout out to him. Make sure to subscribe to the Kamp Koji podcast on your favorite platform of choice so you can listen on the go. And that's it. That's our show. Thank you for everyone who joined. Please follow us on Twitter, on Instagram, and YouTube at Kamp Koji for future updates. Once again, I am Joel, and I will see you all next week.
Perfect.